Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Extraordinary Adventures Pirates. It is from Forbidden Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page to find out more information than I could possibly tell you here. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, Extraordinary Adventures Pirates is a competitive deck building game with some very light pick up and deliver to it. I don't want to make it seem like the whole thing is like that, but you'll see what I mean, because essentially what you're doing is you and the other players are pirate captains, but you have control of 3 different ships, and there are these shipping routes, like these main routes going through the Caribbean during the great age of piracy, and you need to direct each of your ships to go through these 3 different routes, and along the way, of course, since you are pirates, you will plunder merchant ships in order to get their precious cargo of all these things like spices and coffee and things like that, and then you all and silks, and then you also want to get the crew from those ships, because that is something that happened back in actual pirate history. Crew is always a very valuable commodity, so you'll take their crew as well and force them to work for you. And then you'll want to land in port, also get more crew, but perhaps hire them in port, and potentially trade in all of those goods that you've got from the merchant ships in order to get actual treasure, like the good stuff, some of which is based on actual pirate treasure from like famous pirates like Black Bart and stuff like that. Now, mechanically speaking, since that's the important part, you're doing this through deck building. So there's very light deck building in the game where you're using that to as movements to propel your ships down those shipping routes using movement cards, but also special ability cards and things that can help you out in that regard, and making your deck stronger through typical deck building mechanics. And again, that pick up and deliver aspect is simply getting that cargo and getting it to port to get those valuable treasures. And there's a little bit of a racing aspect too, because you also want to make sure you're as far down that shipping route as possible with each of your ships before you finally get to the convergence point of Trinidad and end the game. Almost basically explained the whole game there, but there's a little bit more to it than that. So let me go ahead and show you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype copy of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here in this version of the game may change slightly in the final version, and that is exactly why you need to go to the Kickstarter page and find out more information. In particular, the art may change, so do bear that in mind. But then in any event, we are going to come back and discuss it further. Extraordinary Adventures Pirates is a competitive deck-building game and pick-up-and-deliver game for up to 2 to 5 players. Each player is a pirate captain with 3 ships under their command, looking to steal cargo and crew from merchant ships along 3 different routes through the Caribbean. Along the way, you may also get a chance to trade in cargo for valuable treasures from more famous pirates, which will net you valuable victory points, as well as getting each of your ships farther along the shipping routes than the other players, also in order to get points. The game ends when someone reaches Trinidad, and whoever has the most points will be the winner of the game. To set up the game, start by laying out the game board. Notice the 3 shipping routes, blue, red, and black, each with their own starting point of either Gran Granada, Havana, or St. Augustine, but all with the same ending point of Trinidad. Each player chooses a color and places 1 ship in their color in each of these spaces, then places a 4th ship in front of their play area to remind people who they are. Along each of the shipping routes are multiple merchant ship spaces. Take the cargo bag and fill it with cargo crate cubes in 5 different colors. Shuffle them around inside the bag and then randomly draw and place the indicated number of crates on each merchant space. Then randomly decide the turn order of the game, and depending on the number of players, each player will get starting crates from the bag. For instance, with 3 players, the starting player gets nothing, the second player gets 1 at random, and the third player gets 1 of their choice from what remains. Shuffle all the treasure tiles and lay out a number of them equal to 3 times the number of players plus 1. The rest are kept to the side, but they could be used later. A deck of merchant cards are shuffled and left on the board face down. Nearby, you shuffle all of the port cards and make a face-up row of 3 right near it. I'll explain more about all of these cards in a little bit. Lastly, every player gets an identical starting deck of 10 cards. They'll shuffle it and draw 5 cards to constitute their starting hand. And before we go any further, I'll point out again that this is a deck building game. During the course of the game, you'll acquire new and better cards that will be placed into your discard pile. Every round, you redraw back to 5 at the end of your turn, and if you have no more cards left in your deck, you'll reshuffle your discard pile and keep drawing until you have 5. In this way, you eventually draw and use the better cards that you've gained during the course of the game. Beginning with the randomly chosen start player, you'll begin the game and take turns in clockwise order. Turns are very simple. You play exactly 3 cards from hand and resolve their effects, discard the cards you played and didn't play, then draw back up to 5 and pass play to the next player in clockwise order. Let's go over the starting cards and what they do. Everyone gets 6 lubber cards, 3 able-bodied seamen, and 1 sailing master's mate. Each of the cards has a movement amount, 1, 2, or 3, which is the number on the bottom right. When you play 1 or more cards, you choose one of your ships and move it that many total spaces along its track, either forward or backward. You not only need to move in order to get to points of interest, but at the end of the game you get more points if your ships are farther along the tracks than your opponents. Some cards also have a secondary ability, and you need to choose to use either that ability or the movement of the card when you play it. For instance, the mate here can eliminate one of your other cards from play, which is actually a good thing when you need to filter out your old and terrible cards. When a player's ship lands on a merchant ship space, they plunder it. They stop their movement and can no longer move for the rest of the turn. They get to claim all the cargo crates there and claim the top card of the merchant deck, placing it into their discard pile. These cards are generally better than most of the cards that you start with, though some have the movement condition that you can only move along a certain color track. The crates, by the way, are not replenished on the board unless a special effect says otherwise. Also, keep in mind that leftover crates could be worth points at the end of the game. If a player's ship lands in a port, their movement stops for the turn and 2 things happen. First, they get to take one of the port cards. They can either take one of the 3 face-up cards or take the top one off the deck without seeing it first. These are even better cards for your deck. They generally give you great movement, sometimes even letting you move all 3 of your ships at once, and some have abilities that actually let you steal cargo or cards from other players, or even grant you treasure for points at the end of the game. Some of these cards are one-time use, meaning that once you draw and use them, they're removed entirely from the game. Others are actually played down to the table and linger, not getting discarded at the end of the turn and continually granting a benefit, unlike the other cards that you play. The other thing that may happen in a port is buying treasure. You can buy any treasure tiles you can afford by trading in the indicated cubes in the right color and placing them in the cargo bag. Then, simply take the tile and leave it face up in front of you. If the treasure tiles ever run out, take a number of the remaining tiles from the setup equal to the number of players and place them face up, but only do this once. If they run out again, that's it. Also, you can only land in each specific port once per game. The game will end immediately when one of the pirate ships lands at Trinidad, the ending conversion spot for all 3 tracks. Then you'll add up points. Every treasure tile and treasure card you claimed is worth its face value. Every leftover cargo crate is worth half a point. Finally, look at the placement of each of your ships. You'll get bonus points if any of your ships are in first place or possibly second, third, or fourth place, assuming there are 3, 4, or 5 players, respectively. Whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. That is Extraordinary Adventures Pirates. Well, so Forbidden Games, who is the publisher of Extraordinary Adventures Pirates, is known for making games that are accessible. They're Euro-style games that are accessible. And sometimes that can have a negative connotation to it. People say, oh, it's just family-friendly, it's not really got any meat to it or anything like that. No, it is a very strategic game with important decisions you need to make along the way, and you have to plan things out and really strategize and be efficient in order to maximize your points. All those typical things that you would expect from a much heavier Euro-style game. But Extraordinary Adventures keeps it to the important parts and keeps it flowing very naturally, and it doesn't overwhelm you with a ton of different things you can do, but there are different options that you have. So the deck building aspect, and it is sort of your standard deck building thing, but with some twist to it, like the fact that it isn't critically important to get a large degree of new cards into your deck, but you want to have some, and you still want to do the efficient thing of getting the bad ones out. But what's most important is just keeping moving. And since almost every single card can give you movement, that means that if you don't get the best cards in the game, that's okay. It's not really going to hamper you too much. Also, you have exactly 3 cards to play every turn, so you're not going to have like outrageous combos. It's very straight to the point of what you're going to do. Where the important decision making comes in is how you use those cards to move the ships in the 3 different shipping lanes, because you can only move the one of them, and you have to, unless you have a special card that lets you move multiple ships, and that's where it's like, okay, hang on now. It's very important that I move quickly down each of these lanes, especially since not only do I want to get as far down as possible before the end of the game, if someone gets to Trinidad and ends it, but also, if I don't get to a merchant ship first, someone else is going to plunder it. If I don't get to a port first, someone might get that awesome card in the lineup, or might get the treasure that I have my eye on, because you can see each other's cargo, and just say like, well, the little cubes, and say, well, I really want this one, and I've been getting the right allotment of cubes to get that treasure. He's got the same cubes as me, and he might steal it out from under me, so I need to rush as fast as possible. In rushing, you might have to pass, because of the way that the routes work, sometimes you have to go out of your way to get to, say, a merchant ship or a port. But in doing that, you're going to slow yourself down. Do you pass over cargo, knowing that you might not even have a chance to spend it? But cargo can be worth points at the end of the game too, so it's not totally a lost cause if you don't get a chance to spend it. These are the decisions you have to make. How fast do you go down the track? How many detours do you make? Do you try to go all out for getting those treasures and maybe don't worry so much about getting the first, second, third, or fourth place, depending on the number of players? That's a decision you have to make. So it is really interesting how, again, very light deck building, very light pick up and deliver, for lack of a better phrase, but together something more strategic than you would expect from a game like this. And the fact that it's got, it's pirates, which is not really lighthearted, but it's portrayed in a very lighthearted theme here, and also, bright, colorful artwork, especially in the final version of the game. Not a ton of setup, not a ton of teaching time. There's a lot of cards in the game with a lot of variety, but the cards, again, very straightforward. Movement, maybe a special ability. You have to decide. Some of them stay in play, most of them don't. Some of them get removed from the game, most of them don't. So again, very straightforward. If this sounds like something that appeals to you, if you need a game that is strategic enough that it's definitely going to or potentially going to work for your hardcore gamers in your group, but also accessible enough for people who are younger, casual gamers who just are not used to this type of game, and if you like the pirate theme on top of all of that, listen, you don't need to take my word for any of this. You can go to the official Kickstarter page and find out even more information if you're curious. And you can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is Extraordinary Adventures Pirates from Forbidden Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.